What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing possibly the most fun team I've used so far this season with a triple Meteor Mash team, which of course costs just 45 energy this season, making it a Frenzy Plant clone, with Clefable in the lead, Shiny Shadow Metagross and Lucario in the back. And this was one of the first teams I actually wanted to showcase this season, but it's taken me a whole month to get the right moves on Lucario due to having so many Charge DM options, and obviously the Charge DM system just being completely random. But I finally got all the right moves and the team did a lot better than I was expecting. Of course, it is very soft to fire and ground type Pokemon, and certain Pokemon like Skeledirge can completely run through the entire team. But despite that, I was still able to beat multiple fire types, multiple ground types, and I was also able to beat Skeledirge. So with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. What has been your favorite team you've used so far this season? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Clefable into Azumarill. So this is a fine matchup for me. Gonna stay in here. Eventually, I probably will look to swap out of this matchup, but we can stay in, go for that Meteor Mash. Clefable's so fast to reach the Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash does about 30-35% of their HP. I'm gonna no-shield this, and then I will look to swap into my Shadow Metagross. Now, this is technically an ABB style team, although Lucario and Metagross, whilst they are gonna deal a lot of damage with the Stab Meteor Mash, they do function quite differently here. But at this point, I'm going to no-shield this, as the opponent is going to go straight for Discharge. We were able to grab a shield advantage with that Meteor Mash despite being resisted, just because of how hard it hits from the Metagross. Now we're going to come in with Clefable. I'm going to go for one Fairy Wind, fire off the Swift. Swift does decent damage there, and the opponent's now going to swap into a Galarian Stunfisk. I'm going to bank the energy, come in with my Lucario, and hopefully the opponent does just full send an Earthquake. The opponent is going to full send here, so I'm committing to a full fast move farm down. They do reach a last second charge move, however, this is going to be a double resisted non-stab rock side. I'm able to tank it, and I've got back-to-back Meteor Mashes. So I go for the first one. It takes out Azumarill from that range. We can go for Meteor Mash number 2. Meteor Mash grabs the final shield. I swap into Clefable. Meteor Mash should be doing more damage than Swift here. It doesn't quite get the KO, but the Fairy Wind will register after, of course, I use my shield. So it takes out the Charger Bug, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You see Talonflame in the lead. So, bit of a tricky matchup here. Definitely where we want to see it, however. And once again, Clefable is just super spammy. I'm running Swift specifically because I need coverage up against Fire-type Pokemon. But they actually end up shielding that first charge move, which is very interesting. They're going to fire off the Flame Charge, of course, boosting up their attack stats. But since they threw immediately, that's going to allow me to reach 2 more Swifts before they get to the next move. However, they double shield the Talonflame. That is certainly not ideal for me. But we go for another Swift, and at this point, I'm kind of forced to double shield my Clefable as well. Flame Charge, of course, gonna boost up their attack stat once again, but Clefable able to reach a Meteor Mash, and once again, this is gonna do slightly more damage than the Swift, and it actually puts them into range where I can Force Palm farm them down. They're gonna come in with a Corviknight. I'm gonna look to throw on CMP here, winning CMP with Lucario, and Aura Sphere does big damage. Of course, the opponent is gonna go straight for Air Cutter. Air Cutter gets the KO, but they do not get the boost. Now we come in with our Shadow Metagross, kind of forced to throw straight away here, otherwise they will reach a payback. Meteor Mash gets the KO, and their final Pokemon is going to be Credilli. They're on Bullet Seed, so slightly faster to reach that first charge move. However, second time around, Meteor Mash just takes 6 bullet punches. We get there on CMP, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You can see Azumarill in the lead. So once again, well, and never mind, actually, they're going to say swap into a Rapidash immediately. I was going to say, once again, we will stay in with Clefable, but eventually look to swap out of that matchup. However, we're in a great position. The opponent is going to fire off the charge move here, and because, of course, they did have a one-turn swap, we are going to be slightly ahead on energy, meaning we can, once again, go for 3 Swifts here before the opponent reaches back-to-back charge moves. So we go for Swift number 3 here. Are they going to double shield? The opponent is going to double shield. And at this point, I guess we just let Clefable go down. I'll put them into range where hopefully Lucario can just come in, 2 Force Palms, get the farm down, but they get damage registration error. And you know what? I'm actually just going to let Lucario go down there. Don't really want to use my final shield. So we come in with the Metagross. We get the Bullet Punch farm down. And at this point, I am just going to look to overfarm. I realize, of course, this is going to be a resisted charge move. The opponent does go for the Ice Beam, but that's fine with me. I'm now going to look to farm up to very close to 100 energy. Fire off the Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash gets the KO, and their final Pokemon is going to be Medicham. Medicham, of course, very bulky, but we get to Meteor Mash. We throw on CMP, and it takes out the Medicham from that range, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You see Skeledirge in the lead. Now, this is definitely the worst case scenario for me. Of course, Clefable only has resisted charge moves. Lucario only has resisted charge moves. Metagross does have Earthquake, but it is going to take quite a while to get there. However, you can see that Meteor Mash does respectable damage here. And honestly, I probably should have baited here just because we do get them very low already. They're obviously going to shield here. However, unfortunately, they're probably going to double shield. So, I don't really know what my game plan is here. I think, of course, I'm going to have to shield. At this point, I probably will bait because I realize they are certainly just double shielding and farming me down. So, we go for Swift. Swift grabs the final shield. We bank the energy and we swap into Metagross. And this is perfect. We are doing exactly what we want. We're forcing them to throw, which they didn't really need to do. They could have just farmed me all the way down. But now we're just one away from the Meteor Mash. So, we throw it immediately. Meteor Mash, of course, resisted, but it will get the KO. The opponent's going to come in with a Furret, and unfortunately, they do get quite an aggressive farm down. And we can come in with Lucario. Hopefully, they're not on Brick Break here. Otherwise, that would be very bad for me. But they fire off the Swift. But then they make a really nice catch. They're catching onto Altaria. I had to throw straight away there. But of course, I guess I could have technically waited to see if they would make that catch. Either way, Meteor Mash wouldn't take out the Altaria. So regardless of that catch, we would have lost anyways. But GG's to that trainer. Unfortunately, Skeledirge in the lead. Double shielding was just a bit too much for this team to handle. But into the next battle, GG's to that trainer, by the way. Going to see another fire type in the lead. However, this is much more manageable for me. As of course, it is a Turtonator. Going to take neutral damage at least from the Fairy Wind. And it does take neutral damage from Swift. But here they swap into a Credilli. Now we bank back-to-back Meteor Mashes. However, unfortunately, because I swap out a bit late there, we don't get a full Bullet Punch farm down. So maybe I should have swapped out a bit sooner than that. But we are just barely going to reach another Meteor Mash. Now this is resisted damage. We are also debuffed, but it ends up grabbing a shield from the opponent, which is quite nice for me. We're going to come in with Clefable, and we do farm up over 100 energy. So I guess we definitely should have swapped out with our Clefable slightly sooner than that. But they swap into a Kanto Marowak. We've got so much energy here. So Meteor Mash is going to connect. You can see it does just under half their HP. I actually go for the Swift intentionally because I now recognize I need to get energy on my Lucario. So I'm going to shield the first move here, as of course they are going to go for a Bone Club. We can now go for the full Force Palm farm down. And this Turtonator, unless they go for back-to-back Brutal Swings, which won't KO, we should be able to outpace them here. The opponent goes for the first one, but we've now got the energy for Aura Sphere. And of course, Aura Sphere, big damage. It takes out the Turtonator, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there, into the next battle, Clefable into Florges. So this is a fine matchup for me. I do expect the opponent will just throw straight away, but just in case the opponent tried to make a catch there, I don't throw immediately. I don't know who wins CMP in this matchup anyways. Maybe it would be the Florges, so it doesn't make sense to throw immediately. But either way, they actually swap out, possibly looking to catch a Meteor Mash there onto their Shadow Giratina. But of course, I'm not running Dazzling Gleam or whatever the other one, Moonblast either. So we are going to go for another Meteor Mash. The opponent overfarms, but they throw on CMP. They barely hang on, which is actually fine with me. I'm just going to no-shield this as they go for an Ancient Power. We now come in with the Metagross. We actually don't take any fast move pressure from the Giratina, but they come in with Annihilate, but they give me a huge win condition. They swap out there. All they needed to do was stay in, and we lose that game. But now, of course, we can Bullet Punch, farm them all the way down. We come out with back-to-back Meteor Mashes. First one should be grabbing the final shield from the Annihilate, and the second one looks like a CMP tie here, which of course we win. Meteor Mash number 2 will of course connect here, and eventually, when it does, it will be taking out the Annihilate, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up in there into the next battle. We see Clefable into a Colossal. So, this is a bit of an awkward matchup for us because, of course, it is a Fire-type Pokemon. However, Lucario is going to do fairly well here, and Clefable also can hit for at least neutral damage with these Meteor Mashes here. So, I'm going to chip with the first one, then I will tank the Charge Move, and then swap into Lucario. Of course, they have just boosted up their Fire Spin damage, so maybe that wasn't the best idea. However, I'm going to shield anyways, and then go for a full Force Palm Farm Down. We're fairly low here, so I'm going to wait to see what comes in. They come in with a Feraligatr, so I go straight for Aura Sphere. They actually no-shield that. That is huge for me. They do get the Shadow Claw farm down, but that's okay. Clefable will outpace them to the charge move, so we're going to come in, but they actually swap into Shadow Toucannon. So we're going to come in with the Shadow Metagross, and at this point, I'm definitely just going to shield this. The opponent full sends a Beak Blast, which might actually be slightly better for me, as it means they don't reach another charge move, and we get slightly more farm. Now they come back in with the Feraligatr. We're going for Meteor Mash. We grab the first shield there. We can grab the second shield, and then my switch clock should be up very soon. You can see I'm clicking on it, and I go for the charge move, but we get an extra fast move through instead, and as a result, it's a CMP tie, which we lose, and as a result, we end up losing that game. That is so painful for me. Of course, we did have a ton of energy we could have just thrown there, but in clicking on the switch button, I then clicked on it again, which somehow registered another fast move instead of allowing me to go for a charge move, which is frustrating, but anyways, GG's to that trainer. Into next battle, we're going to see a Talonflame in the lead. So once again, where we want to see it here with this team, although still not a great matchup for me. Again, they do throw straight away, so I can go for 2 more Fairy Winds, go for Swift number 2, and then do the exact same thing and reach a third Swift before, of course, they can go for another Flame Charge. So Swift number 3 coming through. Swift is going to connect here, and again, they are going to throw it immediately. At this point, I kind of have to just no-shield this. I think I'm going to come in with my Lucario here, commit to a full Force Palm Farm Down, and we are just barely able to get it. They come in with a Charmander Ninetales, so that is a mistake there, but their final Pokemon is going to be a Psywave Lapras, and that is huge for me. Shadow Metagross should be able to sweep this game here. All we need to do is grab the final shield. We are, of course, having a slight energy... slight energy advantage on the Metagross, so we can... I mean, we didn't need to overfarm here. It doesn't really matter. I don't need a charge move to take out the Ninetales, because Bullet Punch is double super effective. And again, it looks like the opponent has once again just rage quit out of the app. I don't understand why people do this. There is a button literally on the top left of your screen which you can click on if you're going to lose there. But either way, I mean, if you didn't want to get the... If you want the battle to actually register for, like, the Go Battle Pass thing, then you can, of course, just wait. You don't have to, like, literally leave the app there and causing it to stall on my end. But either way, into next battle, we're going to see Blastoise in the lead. I'm actually going to swap into Lucario because I am double resisting the fast move damage. And if they do end up staying in this matchup, maybe I can Force Palm Farm them all the way down. However, unfortunately, they punish me with one of the worst things we can see because, whilst, yes, I can grab a shield back from the opponent, they can fully counter farm me down. And my Clefable is pretty low to the point where Rage Fist will likely get the KO. So at this point, we're going to come in. We throw the Meteor Mash straight away, but it is a CMP tie. Maybe I just barely lived that, so I probably should have just no-shielded. But either way, we're going to go for the Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash, going to be shielded. They swap into a Sizzle, and there's just literally nothing Metagross can do there. Of course, Night Slash going to be super effective, and so I just concede the match. But GG's up in there into the next battle. We see Primeape in the lead. They say swap into Corviknight. Now, I don't really have a good answer to Corviknight with this team at all, but the opponent's going to no-shield an Aura Sphere, which does huge damage. At this point, they should be at back-to-back Air Cutters, so I no-shield the first one. They do reach another one. You know what? I think I'm just going to no-shield this. I'm going to save my shields here because Shadow Metagross does really need shields. I'm going to come back in with Clefable because I can get off 2 Fairy Winds to get the full farm down, but they come in with a Registeel, a complete wall to the energy. However, Clefable is just so spammy, and Meteor Mash is quite a decent move here. Even though it's non-stab, we should get them into the yellow health range. So at this point, we go for Meteor Mash number 2. I'm waiting for them to throw some energy before I swap into my Metagross. Now, I'm hoping the opponent will swap out of this matchup straight away back into their Primeape, but they don't. They're going to stay in. They're going to fire off another charge move, and this is quite tricky for me because now Primeape can very comfortably outpace me. However, they stay in with the Registeel just to be fully farmed down there. That is absolutely huge for me. We can go for Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash grabs the first shield. We can go for a second one straight away, and here I make a bit of a mistake. I swap out into Clefable because I thought I was one away from the next Meteor Mash, meaning I would outpace them. However, it's a CMP tie, and actually we haven't dealt any fast move pressure up against this Primeape, so it's going to be a close battle. But Clefable just barely able to Fairy Wind farm them down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle, Clefable into a mirror match. So at this point, of course, I do have two steel types in the back. Lucario is a little bit awkward just because I do hit for resisted fast move pressure. So I'm actually going to shield in this matchup, and I'm actually going to bait with a Swift. If I'm able to grab a shield here, that is huge. That will allow me to outpace them to the next move, and now I can go for a Meteor Mash. This probably grabs the shield straight away, so now I'm going to swap into Metagross, and with all shields down, of course, this is a bad matchup, but we can reach the Meteor Mash. A Meteor Mash, huge damage, it gets the KO there. They come in with their final Pokemon, a Galarian Moltres, and we should be looking fine right now. Of course, we can come in with Lucario, and I am certainly going to shield the first charge move, but all we need to do here is make sure we make a catch of the next fly onto our Clefable, and there's just no way to lose this game. We're able to make the catch there. The opponent fires off that fly straight away. The opponent is also going to swap back into their own Clefable. They fire off the charge move, but we've got Meteor Mash already loaded on our Lucario. Meteor Mash will be connecting, and of course, it's super effective damage. It takes out Clefable. Two more Force Palms. We get the farm down up against the Moltres, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You can see Wigglytuff in the lead. So once again, we got two Steel-type Pokemon in the back. They're actually going to swap into a Shadow Drifblim. So I'm going straight for Meteor Mash. They very likely shield this just because they're going to go for a debuff here. So maybe it could have gone for Swift, but Swift is a very risky bait there, and it doesn't save that much energy. So I think we just play it safe there, going for the Meteor Mash. We're now going to look to overfarm here. Going to go for another Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash number 2. Actually going to be double shielded by the Drifblim. That is a strange decision, but we can go for another one. Getting them fairly low. I'm going to swap into my Metagross, and I'm actually going to shield this anyways. And the opponent's going to go for a Mystical Fire there. That is quite surprising to me. At this point, I was thinking it's definitely going to be a Mud Slapper. As long as it's not Gastrodon in the back, we should be fine. But it is Gastrodon, meaning they resist the Steel-type damage. Maybe I could have committed to an Earthquake there. I wasn't sure if I would get there, but we do still have some play. If I'm able to make a catch, maybe I'm still in with a chance, and I'm able to do exactly that. The opponent goes and full sends an Earth Power. That is huge for me. The opponent gonna swap back into Wigglytuff, and we can go straight for Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash easily gets the one shot here, but the opponent will be reaching a last second Body Slam, and unfortunately Body Slam, whilst it is resisted, it easily takes out Lucario from that range, and I do lose that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle. We see a Abomasnow in the lead, so I'm actually happy to stay in this matchup initially, look to grab a shield advantage, and then swap out there. So we go straight for Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash does grab that shield, and now we swap into Lucario. We're able to bait out a Kanto Marowak, and I'm full sending Meteor Mash once again. Meteor Mash, huge damage, and it's actually going to force the opponent to throw some energy. Now, technically, I could shield here. I think Force Palm might get the KO there, but you know what? We'll take the shield advantage. We come back in with Clefable. We get the full farm down. And they're going to come in with an Altaria, which is absolutely fine with me. Excuse me there. We go for Meteor Mash, grabbing the final shield from the opponent, and that is just going to be game over. We can go for another Meteor Mash. That looks like a CMP tie, which, again, absolutely perfect for me. Best case scenario for me. Gonna no-shield this. Gonna swap out straight away into Metagross. Catch a charge move. Wasn't meaning to catch any moves here, but at this point, we just shield up the next Weather Ball, commit to a full Bullet Punch farm down. We're going to be coming out with another Meteor Mash loaded pretty much. We get the farm down. We're one away from the next charge move, and so we're able to get there in time. And, of course, Meteor Mash takes out the Altaria, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see a Bastiodon in the lead. Now, we're going to be swapping into our Metagross straight away. We're met with a Swampert, unfortunately. However, not the worst matchup here because they don't have that much fast move pressure. We go straight for Meteor Mash, and we're able to grab an early shield advantage. At this point, I'm happy with that. It's potentially, if we want a double shield there, they can fully Mud Shot farm me down. So, instead, we're going to come in with Clefable. I realize they're likely going to be on Sludge as well, which is going to hit for super effective damage. However, Clefable will still be able to tank a Sludge here, so I don't need to shield this. I'm going to hope that whatever's in the back, Lucario can sweep with 2 shields. So we're going to look to overfarm ever so slightly here, firing off the Swift. Swift coming through, gets the KO. We swap out straight away into Lucario, and they've got a Dartrix, but they're not on Peck, they're on Leafage, which is resisted. Now here I realize this is just a Seed Bomb, but I might as well use a shield anyways. We can now go for Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash doesn't quite get the KO there, but one more Force Palm gets the farm down, and this is so game over. The opponent is going to recognize that, and so they just concede the match. So, GG's up on there into the next battle, Clefable into a Shadow Charizard. This, again, another really tricky matchup for me. I'm going to throw a Swift here just before they do get to that first Blast Burn. Swift is going to be shielded by the opponent, and now we're going to look to throw the next one straight away. At this point, I'm going to shield this. They farmed up to the Blast Burn, but unfortunately, they actually get a boost there with the Air Cutter. Of course, you can't see it, but I play with the in-game sound on, so I hear the boost sound that is going to register there. But either way, we're going to throw straight away once again, and unfortunately for me, this Swift isn't really going to deal that much damage, and the opponent going to be quite smart here. They're going to look to overfarm as much as possible before throwing, and unfortunately with the boost, Air Cutter gets the KO there. So, at this point, they are just going to be 2 away from a Blast Burn, so I'm fully sacrificing Lucario, hoping my Metagross can sweep in the end game, and let's find out, can we sweep here? Absolutely not, as they've got a Shadow Primeape. They can still easily outpace me here to a Rage Fist. Rage Fist is super effective. It takes out the Metagross, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle, Shadow Cacturn in the lead. So great lead matchup for me. They're going to say swap into a Quagsire, and we're kind of just forced to stay in. Of course, I am weak to the ground typing in the back. So at this point, we're going to go for a Swift here. Swift doesn't really deal that much damage. Meteor Mash is resisted. It would do slightly more damage here, but I think I do need to go for 3 Swifts. So we go for Swift number 2. Swift is coming through here. Swift is going to be no shielded again, and I can get to another Swift on CMP, winning CMP. However, unfortunately, it barely doesn't KO, and I need switch advantage. They've got Shadow Cacturn, which absolutely deletes Metagross. So at this point, they're going to come in with their final Pokemon, Azumarill. We can go straight for Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash probably not going to be shielded here, and it does decent damage. The opponent will go for a full farm down, but we can come in with Metagross. The opponent is going to bank the energy, but they swap back into Shadow Cacturn. Lucario able to fully fast move farm them down. We come out 1 away from the Meteor Mash. They go for the extra bubble. Meteor Mash grabs the final shield, and this is certainly game over. The opponent full sends Play Rough, which gets the KO, but now we can come in with the Metagross, and whilst I would reach back-to-back Meteor Mashes, I can actually just shield this up here, and even if they are at 100 energy, they need 1 more bubble to get to the next charge move, so I'm able to Bullet Punch, farm them down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I see a melee champ in the lead. A great lead matchup for Clefable, and definitely where we want to see it here, especially since they are on counter rather than Psycho Cut. If they're on Psycho Cut, honestly not that bad of a matchup for my Metagross. But either way, we're going to farm up to back-to-back Meteor Mashes here. First one coming through is going to connect. It does big damage, and it means we can actually just settle for a Swift. So, Swift number 2 here coming through. Swift gets the KO. They're going to come in with another Bastiodon, so I swap out straight away into my Shadow Metagross. And the opponent stays in initially, banking energy, but then swapping into Azumarill, and this is looking perfect for me. Meteor Mash is going to be shielded. They're going to go straight for an Ice Beam, which is absolutely fine. This is resisted damage. Ice Beam doesn't KO. We can now go for another Meteor Mash, and Meteor Mash is going to connect. It does big damage, and with that Bullet Punch, we've put them into range where actually I can just come in with Lucario, go for the full farm down. We've still got 2 shields in play here. There is nothing Bastiodon can do, except they're still going to throw a charge move anyways. So you know what? I'm going straight for Aura Sphere. They should not be shielding this. They should realize it's game over, and they do let the move go through, and so I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to what the hell? GG's to that opponent there. Into the next battle. I'm going to see a Bomber Snow in the lead. So, once again, we're going to stay in. Look to grab a shield advantage here. They do throw straight away this time, but that's absolutely fine with me. They go for Weather Ball. We can go straight for Meteor Mash. And then I will look to swap into my Metagross. We grab the shield there. We swap into Metagross, but they swap at the same time. And they come in with Jellicent. And I'm now realizing Jellicent is also a really hard counter to the entire team. Of course, resisting the charge moves from Clefable and Lucario. Earthquake would be neutral here, but Meteor Mash is still going to grab a shield, as it would do quite a lot of damage. At this point, I think I'm just going to no-shield this here as we can come back in with our Clefable and fire off some energy. Now, the opponent is going to look to try and make a catch there, so we're going to swap into Lucario, bank the energy on Clefable, and of course, I don't need to shield this here. The opponent going to go for an energy ball, which does do, of course, more damage, but it means they don't get to a second charge move. However, their final Pokemon is a Charge Bug, another Pokemon that's going to resist all the moves from Lucario, so unfortunately, that doesn't really deal that much damage. I look to try and throw it on CMP here. They don't throw straight away, but they're gonna win CMP, and I realize I can't beat the Jellicent, so there's no point shielding here. Discharge gets the KO, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG to open there into the next battle. We see Credilli in the lead, so I'm going to stay in this lead matchup initially. Going to go straight for Meteor Mash here, as this once again should be forcing a shield advantage. I'm going to wait for them to throw a Rock Tomb, and then I will swap into my Metagross. However, they overfarm massively, and they actually make a really nice catch there, catching, of course, a double resisted Meteor Mash onto their Lantern. However, that slight chip damage means I can now get the KO with an Aura Sphere. I'm going to shield the first charge move as they will go for Surf. I'm going to farm up to back-to-back Aura Spheres, and then of course fire off the first one. Aura Sphere, gotta be no shielded, it gets the KO, but they come in with a Skeledirge, and that is certainly not ideal for me. We go straight for Meteor Mash, gotta be no shielded, and at this point we're gonna come back in with Clefable. Now, at this point, the opponent is going to, of course, throw the charge move. I can live a Torch Song, so I'm forced to no-shield this. And we can also reach a Meteor Mash, and if they no-shield this, this will be huge. Meteor Mash is not respected. We can now snipe with the Bullet Punch damage from Metagross. And it's still not over yet. They have got 100 energy. They can go for Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb debuffs my attack stat. And they can go for a second one straight away, meaning I cannot go for a full Bullet Punch farm down. And actually, my Bullet Punch is really not dealing that much damage. But we go for Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash grabs the final shield. And we are going to force the opponent to throw straight away. And that is huge for me. Clefable does still have a little bit of residual energy, meaning we can go for a Meteor Mash here before they Bullet Seed farm me down. Meteor Mash takes out Credilli, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to open there into the final battle of this video, once again leading into a Bastion, this time a Shadow Bastion. I safe swap into my Metagross, and the opponent is choosing to stay in, so potentially they've got like a double Razor Leaf team in the back line, so I'm definitely just going to shield this. Now, of course, Earthquake is double super effective, but we're not going to need it. Instead, I'm going to go and farm up to 100 energy, go for back-to-back Meteor Mashes. The first one gets the KO there, and they do have a Shadow Razor Leaf first. So at this point, of course, go for Meteor Mash. Meteor Mash grabs the shield there. I'm going to come in with my Lucario, and of course, I'm going to resist the Fast Food Pressure. They're also going to resist the Force Palms, but Force Palm is such a great move here. I'm just going to shield this. I don't believe this is enough for an Acid Spray, so they go for Leaf Blade. We commit to a full Fast Move farm down, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Wigglytuff. We farm up to back-to-back Meteor Mashes here. First one, they're actually not going to shield. It gets the one shot, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.